Okay, chapter 11. The Bembeen Table of Isis. We're going to start with two pictures. Look at that. Yeah. Absorb it. I'm not even going to fucking explain them. You just should know this shit. Talked about it enough. Anyways, the top one, there's a line. Okay? There's two charts. Okay? You got all the little triangle-y things at the top, and then you have a lot of scribbly writing at the bottom. That's to separate the charts. Just so for the people in back. The top one is Levi's key to the Bembeen table. The Isaic tablet, writes Levi, is a key to the ancient book of Thoth, which has survived to some extent the lapse of centuries, and it's pictured to us in the still comparatively ancient set of Tarot key cards. To him, the Book of Thoth was a resume of the esoteric learning of the Egyptians. After the decadence of their civilization, this lore became crystallized in the hieroglyphic form as the tarot. This tarot, having become partially or entirely forgotten or misunderstood, its pictured symbols fell into the hands of the sham diviners and of the providers of the public amusement by games of cards. The modern tarot, or tarot-key, pack of cards consists of 78 cards, of which 22 form a special group of trumps or pictorial design. The remaining 56 are composed of 4 suits of 10 numerals and 4 quart and shekel, or coins, commerce, answering respectively to our spades, hearts, clubs, and diamonds. Our purpose is with the 22 trumps. These form the special characteristic of the pack and are the lineal descendants of the hieroglyphics of the tarot. These 22 correspond to the letters of the Hebrew and other sacred alphabets, which fall naturally into 3 classes of a trio of mothers: a heptad of doubles, and a dodecad of simple letters. They are also considered as a triad of heptads and one apart, a system of initiation and an uninitiate. See Westcott's The Isaic ISIAC tablet. Okay? That's the top. I'm going to get them both out of the way because when I start reading this, I think some of it's at the top and I think some of it's at the bottom. And you'll see what I mean. I'm too fucking stupid to know the difference. So I figured I'd just read them both to you. Now, Westcott's key to the Bembeen table. This is the bottom part with all the writings. Zoroaster declared that the number 3 shines throughout the world. Shines throughout the world. This is revealed in the Bembeen table by a series of triads representing the creative impulses. Of the Isaic table, Alexander Lenore writes, the Isaic table as a work of art is not of great interest. It is but a composition, rather cold and insignificant, whose figures summarily sketched the methodically placed near each other, give but little impression of life. But, on the contrary, after examining it, we understand the purpose of the author. We become soon convinced that the Isaic table is an image of the heavenly sphere divided into small parts to be used very likely for general teaching. According to that idea, we can conclude that the Isaic table was originally the introduction to a collection followed by the Mysteries of Isis. It was engraved on copper in order to be used in the ceremonial of initiation. See new essay on the Isaic table. Now, Chapter 11. The Benbean Table of Isis. A manuscript by Thomas Taylor contains the following remarkable paragraph. Am I recording? Yeah. Plato was initiated into the greater mysteries at the age of 49. The initiation took place in one of the subterranean halls of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. The Isaic table formed the altar before which the divine Plato stood and received that which was always his, but which the ceremony of the mysteries enkindled and brought from its dormant state. With this ascent, after 3 days in the great hall, he was received by the Hierophant of the pyramid. The Hierophant was seen only by those who had passed the 3 days, the 3 degrees, the 3 dimensions, and given verbally the highest esoteric teachings, each accompanied with its appropriate symbol. After a further 3 months' sojourn in the halls of the pyramid, the initiate Plato was sent out into the world to do the work of the great order, as Pythagoras and Orpheus had been before him. Before the sacking of Rome in 1527, there is no historical mention of the MPH-STAA-XI-p162 tablet of Isis. At that time, the tablet came into the possession of a certain locksmith or ironworker who sold it at an exorbitant price to the Cardinal Bimbo, a celebrated antiquary, historiographer of the Republic of Venice, and afterwards librarian of St. Mark's. After his death in 1547, the Isaic tablet was acquired by the house of Mantua, in whose museum it remained until 1630, when troops of Ferdinand II captured the city of Mantua. Several early writers on the subject have assumed that the tablet was demolished by the ignorant soldiery for the silver it contained. The assumption, however, was erroneous. The tablet fell into the hands of Cardinal Pava, who presented it to the Duke of Savoy, who in turn presented it to the King of Sardinia. When the French conquered Italy in 1797, the tablet was carried to Paris. In 1809, Alexander Lenoir, writing of the MPH-STAA-XI-p162, said it was an exhibition at the Bibliothèque Nationale. Upon the establishment of peace between the two countries, it was returned to Italy. In his Guide to Northern Italy, Karl Bedecker describes the MPH-STAA-XI-p162 as being in the center of Gallery 2 in the Museum of Antiquities at Turin. A faithful reproduction of the original tablet was made in 1559 by the celebrated Annius Vicus of Parma, and a copy of the engraving was given by Chancellor of the Duke of Bavaria to the Museum of Hieroglyphics. Athanasius Kircher describes the tablets as 5 palms long and 4 wide. W. Wynne Westcott says it measures 50 by 30 inches. It was made of bronze and decorated with encaustic or smalt enamel and silver inlay. Fosbrook adds, the figures are cut very shallow and the contour of most of them is encircled by threads of silver. The bases upon which the figures were seated or reclined and left blank in the prints were of silver and are torn away. See Encyclopedia of Antiquities. Those familiar with the fundamental principles of Hermetic philosophy will recognize in the MPH-STAA-XI-p162 the key to Chaldean, Egyptian, and Greek theology. In his Antiquities and learned Benedictine, Father Montfaucon admits his inability to cope with the intricacies of its symbolism. He therefore doubts that the emblems upon the tablet possess any significance worthy of consideration and ridicules Kircher, declaring him to be more obscure than the tablet itself. Latertinus Pignorus reproduced the table in connection with a descriptive essay in 1605, but his timidly advanced explanations demonstrated his ignorance concerning the actual interpretations of the figures. In his MPH-STAA-XI-p162, published in 1654, Kircher attacked the problem with characteristic avidity, being peculiarly qualified for such a task by years of research in matters pertaining to the secret doctrines of antiquity, and with the assistance of a group of eminent scholars, Kircher accomplished much towards an exposition of the mysteries of the tablet. The master's secret, however, eluded even him, as Eliphas Levi has shrewdly noted in his History of Magic. The learned Jesuit, writes Levi, divined that it contained the hieroglyphic key to sacred alphabets, though he was unable to develop the explanation. It is divided into 3 equal compartments. Above are the 12 houses of heaven, and below are the corresponding distributions of labor, work periods. I'm not sure which one they're talking about, okay? So you're going to have to look at both of them. You can Google, save it, and then, look it up. Do some homework, because if you want to follow along with this motherfucker saying, you're going to have to know what the fuck that's saying. Just so you know. Anyways, it's the last time I'm going to tell you. A, B. I think we're talking about the bottom. All right. 12 houses, heaven and below, are the corresponding distributions of labor, work periods, throughout the year, while in the middle place are 21 sacred signs answering to the letters of the alphabet. In the midst of all is a seated figure, the panthomorphic I, Y, and X, emblem of the universal being and corresponding as such to the Hebrew Yod, or to that unique letter from which all the other letters were formed. The ionix is encircled by the Ophite triad answering to the 3 mother letters of the Egyptian and Hebrew alphabets. On the right are the ibomorphic and seraphim triads. On the left are those of Nephis and Hecate, representing active and passive, fixed and volatile, fructifying fire and generating water. Each pair of the triads, in conjunction with the center, produces a septenary, and a septenary is contained in the center. The 3 septenaries furnish the absolute number of the 3 worlds, as well as the complete number of primitive letters, to which a complementary sign is added, like 0 to the 9 numerals. Levi's hint may be construed to mean that the 21 figures in the center section of the table represent the 21 major trumps of the tarot cards. If this be so, is not the 0 card, caused of so much controversy, the nameless crown of the Supreme Mind, the crown being symbolized by the hidden triad in the upper part of the throne in the center of the table? Might not the first emanation of this... My wife just got home, so I might have to stop for a second. Might not the first emanation of this supreme mind be well symbolized by the juggler or magician with the symbols of the 4 lower worlds spread out on the table before him? The rod, the sword, the cup, and the coin. Thus considered, the 0 card belongs nowhere among the others, but is in fact the... belongs nowhere among the others, but is in fact the 4th dimensional point from which they all emanate, and consequently is broken up into the 21 cards, letters, which, when gathered together, produce the 0. The cipher appearing among this card would substantiate this interpretation, for the cipher or circle is emblematic of the superior spheres for which issue the lower world's powers and letters. Westcott carefully collected the all too meager theories advanced by various authorities. Is this still going? Okay. authorities, and in 1887 published his now extremely rare volume, which contains the only detailed description of the Isaic tablet published in English since Humphreys translated Montfaucon's worthless description in 1721. After explaining his reticence to reveal that which Levi evidently felt was better left concealed, Westcott sums up his interpretation of the tablet as follows. The diagram of Levi, that's the top one I think, by which he explains the mystery of the tablet, shows the upper region divided into the 4 seasons of the year, each with 3 signs of the zodiac, and he has added the 4-lettered sacred name, the Tetragrammaton, assigning Yod to Aquarius, that is Canopus, He to Taurus, that is Apis, Va to Leo, that is Mophtha, and He final to Typhon. Note the cherubic parallel, man, bull, lion, and eagle. The 4th form is found either as scorpion or eagle, depending upon the occult good or evil intention. In the Demotic zodiac, the snake replaces the scorpion. The lower region he ascribes to the 12 simple Hebrew letters, associating them with the 4 quarters of the horizon. Compare the Sefer Yetzirah, Cap V, Section 1, that is Sefer, Yetzirah, Yetzirah. The central region he ascribes to the solar powers and the planetary. In the middle, we see above the sun marked Ops, and below it is a Solomon seal, above across a double triangle hexapala. 1 light and 1 dark triangle superposed, the whole forming a sort of complex symbol of Venus. To the Ibomorphous, he gives the 3 dark planets, Venus, Mercury, and Mars, placed around the dark triangle erect, denoting fire. To the Nephtian triad, he gives 3 light planets, Saturn, Luna, and Jupiter, around a light inverted triangle which denotes water. There is a necessary connection between water, female, power, passive, principle, Bina, and Sephirotic, mother, and bride. See the Kabbalah by Mathers. Note the ancient signs for the planets were all composed of a cross, solar disk, and crescent. Venus is a cross below a sun disk. Mercury, a disk with a crescent above and cross below. Saturn is a cross whose lowest point touches the apex of the crescent. Jupiter is a crescent whose lowest point touches the left hand end of a cross. All these are deep mysteries. Note that Levi, in his original plate, transposed Serapis and Heket, but not the Apis, nor a Apis Blaine. Perhaps because the head of Bes being associated by him with Heket. Noting that having referred the 12 simple letters to the lower, the 7 double must correspond to the central region of the planets. And then the great triad, AMS, the mother letters representing air, water, and fire, remain to be pictured around S, the central links, or Yod, by the Ophonian triad, the 2 serpents, and the Lionian sphinx. Levi's word ops, OPS, in the center is the Latin ops terra, genuine of the earth, and the Greek ops, Rhea, or Cybele, Sibyl, often drawn as a goddess seated in a chariot drawn by lions. She is crowned with turrets and holds a key. See the Isaic tablet. The essay, published in French by Alexandre Lenoir in 1809, while curious and original, contains little real information on the tablet, which the author seeks to prove was an Egyptian calendar or astrological chart. As both Montfaucon and Lenoir, in fact, all writers on the subject since 1651, either have based their work upon that of Kircher or have been influenced considerably by him. A careful translation has been made of the latter's original article, 80 pages of 17th century Latin. The double-page plate in the color insert is a faithful reproduction made by Kircher from the engraving in the Museum of Hieroglyphics. The small letters and numbers used to designate the figures were added by him to clarify his commentary and will be used for the same purpose in this work. Like nearly all religious and philosophical antiquities, the Bembine Table of Isis has been the subject of much controversy. In a footnote, A.E. Waite, unable to differentiate between the true and the purported nature or origin of the tablet, echoes the sentiments of J.G. Wilkinson, another eminent exotericus. The original table is exceedingly late and is roughly termed a forgery. On the other hand, Edward Winckelmann, a man of profound learning, defends the genuineness and antiquity of the tablet. A sincere consideration of the Mensa Issachar discloses one fact of paramount importance, that although whoever fashioned the table was not necessarily an Egyptian, he was an initiate of the highest order, conversant with the most arcane tenets of Hermetic esotericism. Oh my gosh. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. Time is it? Symbolism of the Bembine Table. The following necessarily brief elucidation of the Bembine Table is based upon a digest of the writings of Kircher, supplemented by other information gleaned by the present author from the mystical writings of the Chaldeans, Hebrews, Egyptians, and Greeks. I'm torn between speeding through this motherfucker and trying to, I want to speed through it. But I also know that that's not the best way to do it for people. Not that anyone's watching this. I'm just trying to figure that out. So don't get mad at me if it's, because it makes sense to me in a way. It's not like I'm retaining it, or whatever, but it makes sense. I'm following along, It's not word salad. This all has points and tentacles going into other directions. So I just kind of read it as I need to ingest it. And, I hope you follow along, or I hope it makes sense. If not, I said at the beginning, you should buy the fucking book and read it. That's it. I'm just bringing you along with my journey. I don't know where your journey's taking you. So, anyone who's watching it understands that. And anyone who's not, fuck them. Symbolism of the Bembine Table. The following necessarily brief elucidation of Bembine Table is based upon digest of the writings of Kircher, supplemented by the information gleaned by the present author for the mystical writings of the Chaldeans, Hebrews, Egyptians, and Greeks. The temples of the Egyptians were so designed that the arrangement of chambers, decorations, and utensils was all of symbolic significance, as shown by the hieroglyphics that cover them. Beside the altar, which usually was in the center of each room, was the cistern of Nile water which flowed in and out through unseen pipes. Here also were images of the gods in concatenated. I hate when he hyphens these words. Here also were images of the gods in concatenated series, accompanied by magical inscriptions. In these temples, by use of symbols and hieroglyphics, neophytes were instructed in the secrets of the sacerdotal caste. The tablet of Isis was originally a table or altar, and its emblems were part of the mysteries explained by priests. Tables were dedicated to the various gods and goddesses. In this case, Isis was so honored. The substances from which the tables were made differed according to the relative dignities of the deities. The tables consecrated to Jupiter and Apollo were of gold. Those of Diana, Venus, and Juno were of silver. Those to the other superior gods of marble. Those to the lesser divinities of wood. tables were also made of metals corresponding to the planets governed by these various celestials. As food for the body is spread on a banquet table, so on these sacred altars were spread the symbols which, when understood, feed the invisible nature of man. In his introduction to the table, Kircher summarizes its symbolism thus. It teaches, in the first place, the whole constitution of the threefold world, archetypal, intellectual, and sensible. The supreme divinity is shown moving from the center to the circumference of a universe made up of both sensible and inanimate things, all of which are animated and agitated by one supreme power which they call the Father Mind, and represented by a threefold symbol. Here also are shown three triads from the Supreme One, each manifesting one attribute to the first Trimurti. These triads are called the foundation or the base of all things. In the table is also set forth the arrangement and distribution of those divine creatures that aid the Father Mind in the control of the universe. Here, in the upper panel, are to be seen the governors of the worlds, each with its fiery, ethereal, and material insignia. Here also, in the lower panel, are the fathers of fountains, whose duty it is to care for and preserve the principles of all things and sustain the inviolable laws of nature. Here are the gods of the spheres and also those who wander from place to place, laboring with all substances and forms, Zonia and Azonia, grouped together as figures of both sexes, with their faces turned to their superior deity. The Mensa Issaka, which is divided horizontally into three chambers or panels, may represent the ground plane of chambers in which the Isaiah mysteries were given. The center panel is divided into 7 parts of lesser rooms, and the lower has 2 gates, one at each end. The entire table contains 45 figures of first importance and a number of lesser symbols. The 45 main figures are grouped into 15 triads, of which 4 are in the upper panel, 7 in the central, and 4 in the lower. According to both Kircher and Levi, the triads are divided in the following manner. In the upper section, PSV, Menzian Triad, 2, XZA, Ammonian Triad, 3, BCD, Moftian Triad, 4, FGH, Oftian Triad. In the center section, GIK, Isaic Triad, LMN, Hectine Triad, OQR, Ibomorpheus Triad, VSW, Aphonic Triad, XYZ, Nephtian Triad. I don't know what those are. Squiggle N0, Seraphian Triad, and looks like YOE, Osirian Triad. And it goes into Greek. In the lower section is the AMN, Horian Triad, EOE, Pandakoian Triad, T. I don't know. I know there's alphas and all that shit. I don't know what the fuck it is. Thostatic Triad, and whatever that is, Alurstic Triad. Of these 15 triads, Kircher writes the figures differ from each other in 8 highly important respects, i.e., according to form, position, gesture, act, raiment, headdress, staff, and lastly, according to the hieroglyphics placed around them, whether these be flowers, shrubs, small letters, and animals. These 8 symbolic methods of portraying the secret powers of the figures are subtle reminders of the 8 spiritual senses of cognition by means of which the real self in man may be comprehended. To express this spiritual truth, the Buddhists used the wheel with 8 spokes and raised their consciousness by means of a noble eightfold path. The ornamented border enclosing the 3 main panels of the table contains many symbols consisting of birds, animals, reptiles, human beings, and composite forms. According to one reading of the table, this border represents the 4 elements. The creatures are elemental beings. According to another interpretation, the border represents the archetypal spheres, and in its frieze of composite figures are the patterns of those forms which in various combinations will subsequently manifest themselves into the material world. The 4 flowers at the corners of the table are those which, because of their blossoms, always face the sun and follow its course across the sky. are sacred emblems of that finer part of man's nature which delights in facing its creator. According to the secret doctrine of the Chaldeans, the universe is divided into four states of being: planes and spheres, archetypal, intellectual, sidereal, and elemental. Each of these reveals the others, the superior controlling the inferior, and the inferior receiving influence from the superior. The archetypal plane was considered synonymous with the intellect of the triune divinity. Within this divine and corporal and eternal sphere are included all the lower manifestations of life, all that is, has been, or ever shall be. Within the cosmic intellect, all things spiritual or material exist as archetypes, or divine thought forms, which is shown in the table by a chain of secret similes. In the middle region of the table appears the all-form containing personified spiritual essence, the source and substance of all things. From this proceed the lower worlds as 9 emanations in groups of 3, the Ophonic, Ibomorphous, and Nephthyian triads. Consider in this connection the analogy of the Kabbalistic Sephiroth, or the 9 spheres issuing from Kether, the crown, the 12 governors of the universe, the Mendesian, Ammonian, Mophthian, and Ophthian triads, vehicles for the distribution of the creative influences, and shown in the upper region of the table, directed in their activities by the divine mind, patterns existing in the archetypal sphere. The archetypes are abstract patterns formulated in the divine mind, and by them all the inferior activities are controlled. In the lower region of the table are the father fountains, the Horian, Pandochaean, Thoustic, and Alluristic triads, keepers of the great gates of the universe. These distribute to the lower worlds the influence descending from the governors shown above. In the theology of the Egyptians, goodness takes precedence, and all things partake of its nature to a higher or lower degree. Goodness is sought by all, the prime cause of causes. Goodness is self-diffused and hence exists in all things, for nothing could produce that which does not have in itself. The table demonstrates that all is in God and God is in all, that all is in all and each is in each. In the intellectual world are invisible spiritual counterparts of creatures which inhabit the elemental world. Therefore, the lowest exhibits the highest, the corporal declares the intellectual, and the invisible is made manifest by its works. For this reason, the Egyptians made images of substances existing in the inferior sensible world to serve as visible exemplars of superior and invisible powers. To the corruptible images they assigned the virtues of the incorruptible divinities, thus demonstrating arcanely that this world is but the shadow of God, the outward picture of the paradise within. All that is within the invisible archetypal sphere is revealed in the sensible corporal world by the light of nature. The archetypal and creative mind, first through its paternal foundation and afterwards through secondary gods called intelligences, poured out the whole infinity of its powers by continuous exchange from highest to lowest. In their phallic symbolism, the Egyptians used the sperm to represent the spiritual spheres because each contains all that comes forth from it. The Chaldeans and Egyptians also held that everything which is a result dwells in the cause of itself and turns to that cause as the lotus to the sun. Yeah. Now, sorry guys. I'm going to stop there today. I know. You're just wanting to hear ramblings of a fucking Pollock, but I'm going to have to stop at 171. I got shit to do.